Hi, I'm Amelia, and what you see here is a dream factory. In my thesis project, what I tried to achieve was to imagine the architecture of the intangible, the architecture of steel and clouds, something that doesn't exist, at least not yet, but might as well. Isn't the future just another world where anything is possible? Let me tell you how I got here. Last summer, when I travelled around the Scottish Highlands, I noticed quite a few CCTV signs to prevent sheep thefts. And I thought, why would anyone want to steal sheep? And I came up with a little story of a shepherd who couldn't fall asleep. So he counted sheep, but counted more sheep than he owned. So he was the sheep thief, and the sheep got lost in his dreams. This strange story became the starting point for developing my thesis project about dreams. Last summer, when the whole pandemic started, I also had troubles falling asleep. Later on, I read that it was a common thing and insomnia rates got much higher. I read an article about how essentially the pressure we're all under these days to be permanently working is steadily causing more and more insomnia. And this is only going to get worse. So, if in the far future, what if people found a way of eliminating sleep altogether? Well, if they could, they would. This gave ground to imagining a future where a cure for sleep is invented and people do not need to sleep anymore. And instead of focusing on the gains of this invention, I focused on what would be lost. With sleep, people would lose dreams. And that's how the making of the dream factory that produces a synthetic alternative started. Because it's a factory, I researched what this typology actually entails and what are its characteristics. I was quite interested in processes like distillation, where from raw ingredients through evaporation and condensation, the final product is something quite hard to connect to its origin. You get a liquid of some strange properties from things like barley. Quantities were also important. I compared capacities of different factories to get an idea how large this facility would need to be and how many workers it would need to accommodate. The design of the factory focuses on the dream-making process, and even before choosing the site, I carried out quite a lot of investigation into what was needed for that. A common feature of factories is a production line which reflects the linear process happening in these buildings, and the dream manufacturing process would also need to be linear. The ingredients needed for dreams are surely quite light and dreamy themselves. I imagined these to be carried by the wind. Scotland is one of the most windy countries on the planet. Locating the factory here would mean that wind that passes through different places and picks up and carries all the different strands of realities could reach the factory that could take these in. The exact location would be in the most western part of the Isle of Skye, which is most exposed to the strong prevailing wind from the southwest. It is at a cliff close to the Nates Point, but a little bit hidden out of the way. It stretches along the Moonen Bay Cliff and utilises the natural features of the landscape, which aided the planning of the factory complex. Let's focus on the most important part of the factory, which are the 8 intake towers receiving and initially processing the raw ingredients. What happens first is the tower taking in the wind that carries strands of realities. The wind passes through the permeable facade that opens up and realities are caught in wool. Wool has some excellent absorbing qualities, therefore it is the best material for catching particles of realities that stick to the wool fibre. All that happens when the tide is low. In dreams, some things tend to be a little exaggerated. We know that in the future, sea levels will rise and tides are also going to get worse. The dream factory is going to use that as an advantage. When the tide is high, it comes up to here, where the bottom of the tower is, and then water is pumped up into the tower to flush the wool. Seawater is around 1,000 times more conductive than fresh water, so when it rinses the wool, it takes the particles of realities with it. Then, the water travels to the memory cores where Scottish legend and tales, ordinary stories and any other bits of memories can be stored. is designed similarly to a nuclear reactor and acts on the principle of a data center, so the cores get very hot and heat the water, which eventually evaporates, picking up traces of the memories stored. Obviously, there's a byproduct of this process, and this is salt. Most of it gets expelled back into the sea, but a tiny bit is added to the raw dream mixture, because dreams are to be taken with a pinch of salt. As the water evaporates and the vapor travels up, it enters a chute that, depending on the amount of dream vapor, can expand. Some of the vapor escapes and makes the factory and the surrounded area veiled in a perpetual mist, so the lighthouse at East Point comes handy here to ensure safety. At the top of the tower, there's a lens which catches the moon energy, or any other lights like northern lights or shooting stars, to spice up the dreams and add some magic to them. And that's the last step before the vapor condensates. 2 large condensers come down to the middle of the tower, and the liquidized dream mixture cascades down, what can be admired by the visitors or workers from the viewing deck within the tower. The raw dreams are then taken to the processing strip for the second distillation. In the processing strip, there are drawing offices where drafters draw story sequences. These are added to the raw dream mixture, and that's how pieces of realities and memories get put in order. As those pieces are quite random, they are put in sequences randomly, which creates strange stories that often seem not to make sense. And that's basically dreams. The final step is the quality control, where the mixture is tested in labs. The ready dream mixture is then taken to the maturation and bottling plant. Once bottled and capped, dreams are ready for distribution. Dreams and bottles are thrown into the sea for a customer pickup on a chosen beach, or there are some other alternative shipping options. The factory would be open to visitors who could see how the factory looks, how the dreams are made, and even throw their dreams into the sea. The intake towers are machines. They are architecture for non-humans, but they've been designed to provide a sense of delight for people who visit them, as well as for the people who service them. I approach the process of designing the dream factory similarly to the process happening in the factory, the process of creating the dream. My first and second semester research, among some other things, focused on what dreams actually are, and I didn't really get an answer. Dreams often feel like fragments of memories assembled together in some really bizarre way. After my last semester's research, I tried to piece together elements of it, quite literally, to envision what the factory could be. These experiments were a significant part of the design process to hopefully make some subconscious design decisions and affect the final outcome. This, together with lots of drawing, redrawing, and drawing again, took me to what you've just seen, which is a dream. And a dream factory that I would hope in some faraway future world could exist.